Okay, who are you?
Hey, I'm Jason Tripp, and I own the Tripp distillery. We're just south of San Francisco in Pacifica. It's pretty small, you know. It's only about 1,000 square feet, and it's not really a legitimate business at this point. It's just kind of a hobby I do on the weekends. And we were luckily our first bar in San Francisco was Rum and Sugar.
Yay!
Just after we opened, I was cyber stalking Rum and Sugar. I was texting them. We're like, "Hey, we're just down the street. How about we drop off some rum?"
Oh, it was you.
Yeah. And so they're like, "Sure, stop by." So at that time.
Oh, now I know who you are. You always like my Instagram Rum and Sugar's posts.
That's
Tripp
me.
Distillery.
That's
That is
me.
you. Now you guys know them on Instagram, Tripp Distillery.
That's how we got to meet you. Yeah, and at the time, you know, for about 2 years, I was just renting out a facility and making no money, working 4 jobs to pay it, and it just still is bleeding like money, like a stuck pig. But I told my wife I was so excited. I'm like, "Sam, there's a bar in San Francisco that wants to talk." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Nah, really, Rum and Sugar." So we were draining our first barrel, and we started on Saturday morning, and then we worked probably, I don't know, for a few hours in the morning. And I'm like, I realized there's a misprint on our labels. You see this in these labels, like there's that squiggly guy right there.
Yeah.
Like, see where that's at. But this is what should have been. And there was a misprint. So we ordered rolls of labels. They come in rolls of 2,000. So I got 2,000 of these, and we put on we put on exactly 24 bottles that went out the door before we figured it out. So after that, we figured it out. But this was one of the first 24 bottles of liter rum we made in our distillery. It's from barrel number 1, and that's how much is left. And I know just because of the boxes we had left after we did the math. This is one of the first 24 bottles we've ever made.
Oh my goodness, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Now, I won't give it to anybody.
I also figured out that when we proof the barrels, like you measure how much alcohol in, it was a very, very hot day. And I didn't take that into consideration. So while the label says this is 112, it's probably a lot more like 118 because it was really hot. Pacifica has 3 days a year when it's 90 or above. This is one of the days. So based off the heat, this is probably 118 proof, I would guess.
Why? Why did you start doing this weekend business of yours?
Aside from being an alcoholic?
Yes, aside from that.
Like everyone, you know, you kind of hate your job. You
Yes, that's
get up
true.
in the morning, go to work, and like, God, do I really want to do this for
And then how did you actually jump from God, I hate my job, into God, it would be so cool owning a distillery?
Well, kind of like in marriage, it starts off with lies, really. And I experimented in my backyard for a while, and then I found a guy who makes really great stills. He's a killer for character, and you have to pay him 50% upfront cash, and he won't give you his mailing address because he's like anti-government. So I went ahead and I gave him 50%, and then 11 months later, he called me. He's like, "Hey, Jason, I got no, it's not like that. He's like, "Hi, Jason, I got your still ready." I'm like, "Okay." So I went ahead and sent him the other 50% in the mail, and then when my wife came home, I'm like, "Sam, what would you think about owning a distillery?" And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Surprise!"
And she's like that woman of yours. She's a keeper.
She had a lot of feedback, but she had quite a bit of feedback.
Okay, so now tell me more.
Sure. We got a couple of months for the settle.
Okay.
So then we rented out a facility, and I figured, okay, we'll start producing next month. But it took a long time to get the permits from the city and the state. So time went, and you know, every month we spent money on rent and bills. My wife was just loving me more for spending all the money on the still. But we eventually got going, and we started off with the still, which my wife has named Big Butt Sally. You can see her in that photo. And if you look at the photo, you can kind of see where it came from. But that's kind of like a Scotch whiskey design. If you're in Scotland, Scotch whiskey stills are shaped like that, and they're meant to maximize the exposure of copper to alcohol vapor and kind of squeeze it off so it goes up and hits the copper, and it condenses and rolls back down. It just kind of recycles like that. And they got me thinking, when we were starting to try and see how they used to make alcohol before machines. And we're looking at old woodcuts and photos from art history books, and so that's how we came to the understanding of how it was made in the Middle Ages. And so we sought out kind of an old-timey still, a Scotch whiskey still. If you go to any modern, like a vodka factory for say, vodka's all made in tall, skinny machines that are stainless steel, but it's quick and efficient, but they didn't always have computers. So they used to use evaporation for what we commonly call vodka. In the Middle Ages, it was made with evaporation. And with computers, you send vodka up a tall, narrow cylinder, and there's plates with holes in it. So each time it hits a plate, it's, quote, distilled once. So if it goes through 8 hours and hits 10 plates, it's distilled 10 times, but it's kind of not distilled 10 times, it's just distilled once. But before computers, they would fill up a barrel about half full and leave the stopper out. And they would do it in the summertime, because it's when the summertime the heat's up and it evaporates more. And alcohol is not alcohol all the way. Like, it's a mixture of really light stuff that gives you a god-awful hangover, and a mixture of really heavy stuff, like oils, that give you an even worse hangover. So when you take it all together, it's kind of alcohol. And that's, in the Middle Ages, is when they first started figuring out how to separate it out. So, you know, we don't have money for machines. We're barely able to get our old-timey copper still. So we kind of went retro tech, and we used oak barrels. We used evaporation to kind of pick up where we left off in the 1600s.
Okay.
And the first thing we do is I'll take, you know, we're a modest operation. We'll take maybe 4 bags of organic cane juice and about 40 pounds of molasses, and we'll mix that with 250 gallons of water. Ferment that for about a week, and you're about 8 to 9%. So we'll put it in Sally, and I'll come in after doing a little quality control from last week, and I'll turn the dial up on Sally to 184. Now, as you can see here, she's got kind of these two big diamonds there. Yeah. And the diamonds are probably about, it's hard to tell, but about yay big around. They're pretty good size. And they're packed with copper mesh, it's like the same stuff you see here. So they're packed with the copper mesh.
Show me.
Oh.
That's copper inside?
Pure copper, 100% copper.
Fine.
So we pack it in there all the way full, and knowing that during the night, all night long, that alcohol vapor will just be hanging out in that copper mesh. So there's a lot of chemical reactions going on. These kind of big, long alcohol molecules, they react with heat and with copper, and they break apart. Like the middle stuff stays, but the lighter stuff breaks apart and starts floating up, and the heavier stuff starts stinking. So I come in the morning
and sink from the middle. That's what I'd do that.
Yeah, you want the middle. So I come in the morning and I turn the still up to 212. So the first stuff that comes out is god-awful. We actually give that away as free lighter fluid to the public. I don't have the permits necessary.
That is social entrepreneurship right there.
Well, you know, it's legally I can't sell it, right. So I can either throw it away or
okay.
We give it away.
Fine.
Yeah, if you buy a bottle and bring it in, empty, we'll fill it up full of lighter fluid. You just take it home. So.
And drink it there.
No, definitely not drink it. Unless you want to like bleed out your ears or something. You you pour it on charcoal and do like hot dogs and hamburgers.
But okay, we'll do just that.
Yeah, I would recommend that as opposed to drinking it. So
are we getting to the blue bottle already?
Give it another 2 minutes and you still a little bit more. So so at that point.
Gosh, I thought you were lying when you said that you like talking.
No, I love talking. So we put it in a stainless steel barrel, and after about a month, like I said, the copper separates out a thin layer of oil, and that's it's called fusel oil, and it's very much oil in the literal sense of the word. And if this hadn't been turned over already, you could kind of turn it over, and there'd be a little cloudiness there, but it's been turned over, so you can't see it now.
We'll already play with it.
That's right. So my still holds 220 gallons. So when I get 4 barrels full of 55 gallons each, the oil will separate. And at that point, I take a tube in and a pump and I vacuum it out. So what you see right here in the bottom, this is fusel oil. And if you rub in your hands, it's very much an oil. It's like gun oil, like a powdery version of gun oil. So this is how much oil I was able to vacuum out of 220 gallons of moonshine, or the equivalent the first time around. So you take the oil out, it's beautiful, it smells good, but it's just hangover concentrate. You could not feel worse.
So hangover is colored blue, basically, now we know.
It's blue and beautiful.
Blue and beautiful.
But you very much would not want to drink it. So after that, I'll run it through Sally one more time, and then if I want it to be rum, we'll fill up an oak barrel and we'll just stop it and give it time. But if we want it to be vodka, that's where we have to bring in the retro tech from like the 1600s before machines. So I'll just put about a barrel about half full and leave the stopper out. And after about a month or so, it probably evaporates by yay much. And what's left is very sweet, but kind of the lighter alcohol I talked about before, that's evaporated. So they used evaporation before machines. So after it's evaporated, I have like a pink rum, which in its own right is very, very good. So we put that back in Sally, run it through a third time. It comes out as organic vodka. And at that point,
I just love the sound of the, what is it, earth?
Earth, Wind, and Fire. It is Earth, Wind, and Fire. I love this place, this rules. So I poured through coconut shells for about 4 days. And the coconut shells, they take a little bit of the alcohol, they take some of the roughness, but they give something back. They give back the sweetness. So it's a little sweeter, and it's inherently sweet because it used to be barrel-aged rum. So that's our normal vodka. But what I brought here tonight is something that we don't sell in bars or in stores. This is only available on site. It's our red vodka. Ooh. And after it's been made into organic clear vodka, then I'll fill up a 60-gallon French oak barrel, pull the top out for a month.
It is kind of pinkish.
Yeah, it is. And it draws out some of the smokiness and some of the fruit from the barrel. It's a French oak barrel with Malbec wine. And people tend to use it for martinis, kind of like a dirty martini.
Because it looks beautiful. Kind of yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the quick version of what we do.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks. You guys are awesome.
All of us are awesome.